Growing up here my entire life, I don't know that I ever thought of Rochester as someplace special. The streets have always carried a rich history by the people who walked them, but I never felt personally connected to that legacy. The one thing that always struck me, though, was that I share the home city of Susan B. Anthony. The first time I ventured down Madison Street to visit her home was when I was in 7th grade. I remember feeling both surprised and proud to have such a rich piece of American history practically in my backyard. Yet, I also remember feeling that the history books had done Susan B. Anthony a disservice, as had I. I'd always been taught to see her as a suffragist, when I knew there was so much more she advocated for and wanted to see projected into our city's future. So, I decided to set out on a mission to learn more. I began by asking whether I could find connections between women in Rochester who embody success and Susan B. Anthony's story.
I was told that when I was born, when I came out, I said, "When am I on?" Is it time? Am I on yet? Well, my name is Betty Miller. My professional name is Betty Miller, and I have been portraying Susan since 1970, right up until 2017. And she has been a big influence because I have always fought for women's rights myself. Being a mother of 5 boys and being the only woman in the household, it's very hard to keep your head above water with all the male testosterone. And the fact that most men, even back in Susan's time, the woman's place is in the home, in the kitchen, or in the bedroom. And I fought against that. And I'm a very strong woman. And I wanted to make things different. I wanted to show that women are intelligent, can make decisions, and can make a life of their own. And that's what I did. I made a life of my own outside the family. I got involved in theater, and in order to raise money to build the church that we were going to be a part of, we did a show called Heaven's A-Poppin'. And from there, the group, a lot of the people in that group belonged to the Henrietta Players, a newly formed community theater in Henrietta. And I got involved in that, and theater became my other life. I've always been a performer, always. I wanted to be a dancer. I ended up being a singer. I'm a singer as well.
Oh, wonderful. Same here.
And I am a director.
Oh, wow.
A producer, a stage manager, prop mistress, makeup chairman. I've done it all in the theater. I've done it all. And then I teach it. A lot of actors who think they can direct, but they can't because they only see the role that they like, that they see themselves in. A director has to see the whole picture, every single person, and you have to see everything that's going on. And I could do that from day one, and I knew I could be a director. And I was the first, I'm very proud to say I was the first woman director at Kodak.
Oh, wow.
For the Kodak Players.
Yeah.
They were called the Kodactors. And from there my reputation grew, and I had a 2-year waiting list for me to direct plays all around the Rochester community.
Wow.
I was approached by a woman from the Women's Republican Club in the town of Henrietta. Hilda Carney is her name. And because of my work in the Henrietta Community Theater, the Henrietta Players, asked me if I would be interested, because they had been asked if they would do a reproduction, a redo of Susan's, because we were coming up to 1973, the 100th anniversary of her arrest and her trial in Canandaigua. And she asked if she would be the judge and if I would play Susan and recreate the trial, and that's what we did.
The one question I want to ask, too, you said 1973, right?
Yes.
So that was kind of during the rise of, like, the women's movement as well. So how do you think that tied into maybe what made portraying Susan B. Anthony at that time in history so important as well?
It was very important because it was like they were behind me, pushing me.
Yeah.
And I was feeding them as well. It helped them. It helped the women's movement. They picked up on it right away. And it helped us. And the Susan B. Anthony House grew exponentially from that. It really did. And now it's a sensation.
Yes.
We've got wonderful women running the place there on Madison Avenue. And they've added a museum. It's so different from what it was when I first played Susan. It's very different.
What was the knowledge like of Susan B. Anthony and her work when you first stepped into the role? Was it very well known, or was it more?
Well, I was shocked at some of her background. She was a teacher. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Okay. Her uncle Joshua had called her and asked her to be head of the women's department in his school in Kenajari, New York. And that's when she became interested in the temperance movement. And then in 1848, after the women's first convention in Seneca Falls, she became acquainted with Elizabeth Cady Stanton. And they really hit it off. And eventually she lived with Elizabeth Cady Stanton and helped her with the children. She had many children, Elizabeth did. And it gave Elizabeth time to write, because she was a great writer. Susan was the speaker, Elizabeth was the writer. And then they went from there.
Leaving my interview with Betty Miller, I found myself in awe of her incredible perseverance and courage, as she advocated both for herself and for women's rights. I saw a parallel between her and Susan in that they both resisted the constructs of their time. I wanted to know whether or not the women that I admire were taught growing up that their achievement was limited by their sex.
My name is Beth Adams, and I have had a career in broadcasting for over 30 years. Right now I am an anchor, reporter, producer, and host of Morning Edition at WXXI, Public Broadcasting here in Rochester. I started in radio in college, actually, quite by accident. I knew that I loved writing. I thought perhaps I would be a writer at some point, but at freshman orientation I met two friends who encouraged me to come to an organizing meeting for the campus radio station. It was going from a carrier current, which just broadcast to a very small geographic area, basically the campus, to an FM signal, FM license.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Where we would be still not broadcasting to a very wide geographic range, but more so in the sense of a commercial radio station that the community at large would be able to hear us. And I went to that meeting and I thought, the people who spoke about the news department and writing copy and anchoring and reporting sounded so fascinating to me. And it was something that I had never even considered before.
Right.
And here was my career presenting itself to me. I didn't really know that at the time. But I took that path and took internships and worked with my classmates and people in the community and ended up really being fortunate to have a career in broadcasting. Work, it is only limited by my own thoughts and actions at this point. And it's really liberating. It's really amazing. I grew up in a family where my mother was the sole parent. She was raising 5 children on her own. Yeah. And she worked full-time. I was a latchkey kid, I think, before that term was coined. Yeah. My siblings are significantly older than me, so gotcha. I had kind of an only child experience there for a while once they were all out of the house and off to college and work. So my mother was a role model in the sense that she was a very hardworking, disciplined person who was not raising her children in an ideal situation, but she was doing the best with what she had. And she was a very ethical person, very honest and straightforward, and her word was good no matter what.
Yeah.
And I think I can attribute my values to my mother. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten through 12th grade, and it was a very traditional parochial educational
Right.
arc. And I was taught by nuns and priests and some lay people. I don't feel that there was a message about female empowerment or feminism through there. I do think I had individual teachers who I looked up to and I can now recognize as being self-empowered. I think young women now, young women that I know and that I work with, have a tremendous sense of self-confidence that I never possessed at that age, because they, I believe, were raised by mothers and probably fathers who instilled that in them, that there were no ceilings, there were no boundaries. They could be, I've had many women tell me that young women, that they were raised with the idea that they could be whoever they wanted to be, and they could do whatever they set their mind to do.
My name is Stella Marionetti. I am currently the district sales manager for Disney Destinations Travel Agency Sales. I've been in this role as the district sales manager for 22 years with the Disney company. I am responsible for educating the travel agency community on the Disney vacations that I represent, and not only educating them but doing consumer events and growing the Disney Destinations business within my territory. I've been in the travel industry for over 35 years. So a little bit about my father's upbringing. His parents came right over from Italy, so he is first generation. And to his best of his ability, and again, his factor of growing up and seeing his role models, his mother, for example, when it came time to his own family and being the first daughter out of 6 children, basically education was not in the question. Going to college was not in the question. It was getting married and being a housewife and being a mother. Those were the three major roles of a woman back in the early 50s. So anyways, he definitely pushed me, and he pushed me not even realizing that he pushed me, because he challenged me, and I did not want to do that. I wanted to have some sort of career, and yeah, I found my passion in life, which is travel. Love that. Went to school specifically for travel, not a 2-year school, a 12-week school equivalent to a 2-year education. But that's how I got started in my career path. And then what's fascinating is that I realized I needed more education. So I went to a local community college for 2 years of business and marketing.
Nice. Good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I was lucky enough to grow up in a family that encouraged a strong and secure sense of female empowerment, one which carried through to my education at Our Lady of Mercy School for Young Women, which embraces a totally female student body. The thing that always struck me about Mercy, though, was its being a Catholic institution. Despite my being surrounded by messages of female empowerment every day, I recognized the fact that the Catholic Church itself was predominantly led by men. I became curious to learn more about female pioneership within the Catholic institution.
My name is Myra Brown, and I'm the lead pastor at Spiritus Christi Church. And my job is pastoral role of preaching. I preach regularly. I visit people in the hospitals and nursing homes who are sick. I meet with people who are walk-ins in the door who may have some needs that they have that we can help them with. I oversee our outreaches and our in-reach ministries and help guide the financial health of the parish. And I work with a staff of 10 to 12 people who all are responsible for different areas within the church. And so we work as a team. When I was about 11 years old, I was the youngest of 8, and I remember going in the kitchen and my older siblings were doing dishes, and I felt like I wanted to participate. I wanted to do it too. And so I asked if I could help do the dishes, and they said, no, you're the baby. Get out of here. We got this. And I just remember walking away feeling completely left out, and I felt totally wronged. And I went in my room and I found $1 and I came back and I said, I'll give you $1 if you let me do your dishes. And they did. They took my $1 and I did the dishes. But I think I realized then that there was something in me that just wanted to serve in some way. When I was probably about 16, 17,
Yeah.
I was invited to come to a Black Catholic church, St. Bridget's,
Nice.
because they had a split. They had lost their pastor, they lost half of their church,
Wow.
which meant they lost half of their choir. And my family was a musical family. We all either sang or played an instrument. And so the neighbor came down and said, would you come help us out? We know you guys sing and we need choir members. So my sisters and I said yes. There's 4 of us. And so we trucked off to St. Bridget's, and we thought we were helping them out by joining the choir. And eventually the priest asked me one Sunday if I would mind preaching one Sunday
Wow,
at the
yeah.
Mass. And I said, no, of course not, right? Because for me, it was personal. What I was doing with God and for God was just kind of my hobby. It wasn't really designed, I didn't think, to be formal. And
Yeah.
so I thought, I didn't see myself doing that, not on the altar, not in a church.
Right.
And so I said no. And he said, well, don't say no, pray about it first. And I thought, all right, fine. I'll go home, I'll pray. God will say no, and he will get off my back, and I will continue to just do what I'm doing. So I did. I went home, and I prayed about it, and I didn't hear anything from God the first time I prayed. And so I got up, and I just thought, well, that's fine. God doesn't want to talk? I guess the answer's no.
Yeah.
Right? So I started cleaning and vacuuming, and as I was vacuuming, I felt a pull in the base of my shirt.
Oh, wow.
And I kind of looked down, and I thought, this is kind of a weird sensation, but I ignored it, and I kept vacuuming. But then it happened again. It was as somebody was pulling my shirt. And I'd known enough of Scripture to know, I just had this sense that this was the Spirit saying that God wants to talk to me. God's calling you. So I left my vacuum cleaner, I went to my room, and I dropped to my knees, and I said, God, are you calling me?
Yeah.
And it was one of the first times that I heard an audible voice. I heard God's voice say, I've called you to preach and teach my word. And I couldn't believe it. I said, you got to be kidding me. You can't be calling me. I'm Black, I'm a woman, and I'm Catholic. And women don't do that in the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And so I was ready for the debate, but silence again, nothing. And then I remembered a few months ago, prior to that, I was talking to a godmother of mine who was a catechism teacher in her church. And she was just kind of a random conversation, but I remembered it in that moment. She said, honey, let me tell you something. When heaven is silent, that means that God said it, and that settles it. I was thinking, oh, you gotta be kidding me, right?
Right.
So, but then I thought, okay, is this what this is, God? Like, you're just gonna say that and then you're done?
Right.
And I think I sat there for a minute to see if God would say something else, and God didn't say anything else. So then I said, all right, fine. If that's what you want me to do, I'll do it. And so I preached my first sermon in a Black Catholic church on a Sunday morning on the altar, and there were 25 people that came to the altar crying out to the Lord that Sunday. And
Wow.
It was amazing. And I thought, okay, then this really was God calling me to preach. By the next weekend, the priest came back to me and said, I did something for you. And I said, what did you do for me? And he said, I was having a conversation with a priest and their staff at Corpus Christi. And they said they were looking to hire a staff person on their ministry team. And I told them I knew the perfect person. And I said, you did? Who? And he said, you. I gave them your number. They're going to call you for an interview. And when they do me a favor and go to the interview. So I went. They did call me. I went to the interview. And I was really struck by how instantly we connected with each other, these strangers who I'd never met before, this church I'd never heard of before. And by 8 o'clock that night, I got a call offering me the position.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it. I was floored. In fact, I cried. The diocese kind of came down on us because we were too inclusive. We were including women on the altar.
Yeah.
We were doing gay unions.
That's wonderful.
And we were, it was all equity stuff, and we were inviting Protestants and anybody who loved Jesus to communion. And apparently all three of those things were against the Roman Catholic Church rules.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, they wanted us to stop doing that, and we really couldn't. We had to follow our conscience. Only having men on the altar and not women was based on a really archaic idea that women weren't as holy as men, and that women were somehow just a little bit less than men are, and that it's the men that God is looking for to be priests and apostles and disciples. But we know that that is not the history of the church. The real history of the church is that in the early church history, there were women who were priests. There were women who were apostles. They got written out of the sacred scriptures, but the research in other texts during that time period very clearly shows that women were in charge of house churches and that they were followers and apostles and disciples with Jesus. We were thrown out, and we were fired. They fired Father Jim first, and then Reverend Mary, and then the 6 of us, myself included. But eventually 400 parishioners decided that they wanted to find a new place to worship, and they went to Reverend Mary and said, if we find a new place to worship, will you lead us? She said yes, thank goodness. And so they found downtown United Presbyterian Church. We did want to remain Catholic. We liked the Catholic tradition, but we didn't want to remain Roman Catholic. We wanted to remain independent Catholic because it was the Roman part of Catholicism that had all these rules about women and these discriminating rules about gay people and discriminating rules about Protestants. And so Catholic actually means universal. Right. And so we wanted to return to the true meaning of what it means to be Catholic. And I got ordained. I looked for a bishop. I picked a bishop who is from Austria.
Wow,
and she's a woman bishop who was ordained through the Roman Catholic Women Priest Movement, which is a whole separate movement that was inspired by Reverend Mary being ordained back in 2001.
Yeah.
And she also found herself a bishop from the Old Catholic Church, so she got ordained an Old Catholic bishop. And so I picked Bishop Christine. She is part of the first 7 Roman Catholic women who were ordained on the Danube River by 2 European bishops secretly, because Rome doesn't have jurisdiction on international waters. So these were 2 bishops who believed in women's ordination, and they secretly ordained these first 7 women as priests. And over time, they would ordain many other women. But eventually they thought that Rome was on to them, and so they decided to ordain 5 of those women as bishops so that they could continue to ordain women who felt called to the priesthood. And so Bishop Christine is the bishop that I chose, and she was one of the first 7.
Having been raised in a Quaker household, Susan B. Anthony was likely compelled by her religious beliefs in a similar way to Reverend Myra Brown, as she advocated for universality in access to education and legal rights. One such right was that of the vote. In a time where men dominated, Susan's voice rang clear, diligently fighting for parity with men. While we say that we've come a long way since the vote was granted in this country circa 1920, nearing 100 years ago, I was curious to garner the opinions of the women that I interviewed.
I'm Carol Cielinski. I am a producer in the film and video industry in Rochester, New York. And I'm also a psychic medium and a reverend, and have a few other businesses as well. Being a woman in any industry nowadays is a difficult place to be. I believe that we as human beings always prove ourselves, but as a female, I believe that we're always working a little bit harder to do better, and also being expected to do more based on, I don't know, maybe not based on the knowledge, but based on being able to handle stress, pain, and agony better than the male does. I think that that's a part of it. I believe that women are still making less money that men are, based in this, if they are in the same position, the female is still making less money. In the scheme of things, I think corporations look at the male as being the breadwinner, and that they have to bring more money home than a female does, because they look at a female who is just making extra money for her family, when in fact a lot of the women are single mothers taking care of their children. I believe that that is still prevalent in America. I think it's around the world. I don't just think it's with America. I believe that women are overlooked a lot. I have that being in business. With owning a building, I have a lot of males that come and go to fix things, maintain, or to build what I need built. I had a roofer not too long ago literally come in to start a job, and I was talking to him, and he literally looked over me, turned, and walked away without any thought in his mind that, I just happened to be a woman speaking. He didn't want to listen to a woman speaking. So when I brought that up to his boss, I said, I want a male that can talk with me. Listen, I've repaired cars. I know plumbing. I know electric. Don't talk to me like I am someone who doesn't know what I'm talking about. And I find that to be an epidemic with males in those positions.
The previous, managers that I had were were men. And needless to say that there definitely was a superior feeling with a male boss versus a woman that became my mentor versus the owner of the agency that I worked for. So it just definitely challenged me right along, from my father to my very first boss in the industry that I am currently in, which is the travel industry, to having a sales manager, right along throughout my entire life.
It was a very male-dominated industry. That's not my experience currently in public broadcasting. It's quite different, actually. But in commercial broadcasting at the time, and it may still be, I don't know, but I was often the only female on a working staff.
Wow, yeah.
Sometimes I felt like the token female. I didn't really have a role model in that sense. I was just figuring it out as I went along. My sisters worked, I think, mostly with other women being nurses, and my mother was an accountant. I think I was pretty naive about the ways in which I might have been treated as a token female. I remember saying to one boss at one time, I think this show I'm on is a little testosterone heavy, and his response was, be more like a guy. And that you can't be naive after a statement like
right,
that. That
no.
pretty much hits you over the head.
Yeah.
Certainly women have broken a lot of barriers. There's no question about it, even in my lifetime in the last 55 years. In sports and boardrooms and, government. But there is still not quite the parity you would hope to see.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I think that's on us, that's on women partly, to make sure that we seek those opportunities and
Agreed.
invest in those opportunities to be the best that we can be.
Strong females with strong passion and compassion are really, I don't think that's ever changed. I do believe that women who get up to speak about abuse or who speak about fixing the world, I think they're the same as Susan B. Anthony or Rosa Parks. I don't think there's a difference between that. I think women are born with that strength. I think that they can carry on and with anything in their lives and be successful if they want to be. If they're strong enough, if we're strong enough as women, life becomes a different path. Strength is really the key to anything successful.
The sort of strength Carol Cielinski mentioned can be fostered to grow early on in an educational environment. I decided to seek out in what ways Susan B. Anthony advocated for equal access to education, and in what ways our modern city of Rochester continues from her advocacy.
Oberlin College was the only college at that time that accepted women. And she worked very, very hard to get women accepted into the University of Rochester. That's what I said previously, that the Board of Trustees said, well, if you raise $50,000 to pay for new teachers to come in and teach these women, we'll admit women. And of course they're laughing behind their hands, oh, she'll never do that. Well, guess what? Susan did.
My name is Suzanne Johnston, Suzanne Klingler Johnston, and I have been in school since I've been 5. I either went to school, taught school, or led schools. And I'm actually, this is interesting, I'm back in the city school district now, coaching a wonderful principal, but here's the funny part, Tori, it's an all-boys school. So I went from all girls to all boys.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
When I was in the city, when I was a principal in the city, it was a co-ed high school on Genesee Street. Interestingly enough, the architect for that building, which was built in 1905, it's a beautiful building, is the same architect that did Mercy.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that
Yeah.
curious? So, as a Mercy grad, I think all of us are shaped by the Mercy experience. And I knew that I didn't think I wanted to be a principal, but I knew I wanted to teach, and I really felt and still do feel that the greatest civil rights issue in our country is quality education for all. Your experience in school should not be determined by where you have dinner at night or what your zip code is. So I was really drawn to urban education, had the career of a lifetime there, loved it most days, and then was asked to come to Mercy. And I never really understood the power of an all-girls school until I came back to Mercy. The sense of self that's developed in an all-women's institution is just very, very different than when you're in a co-ed setting. When I first started teaching, it was at Franklin High School. Do you know where that is? Near St. Stanislaus.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Where Sister Dismas and Sister Carlene live.
Yes, okay.
And there was need there, Tori. Certainly there was economic need there, but not the way there is today. Now when you go into almost any public school in the city, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, it's generally about 98% free and reduced lunch. So everybody is economically strapped. The reason it's not changing is we have many people are very, very concerned about who their children go to school with.
Yeah.
All right. So that would be something Susan B. Anthony would be very, very upset about.
Absolutely.
All
yes.
right. All right. My daughter's going to eat lunch with that person. I mean, just not acceptable. So it's a racial situation. to me, it was so thrilling to see young people who maybe would not be predicted to be successful succeed and know that you had a part in that. I mean, the mayor of Rochester was one of my students.
Oh wow, I never knew that.
There are two judges in town that first generation to go to college, first in their generation to go to college, and they're sitting judges. There are at least 4 principals in the city that graduated from Wilson.
Wow.
So, you know, what could be more fun than that?
Yeah, no, that's crazy. Like, I just get excited about that too, because like it's just such a gratifying feeling, I would imagine, to see that and to know that you had a small part in that is huge.
Very huge.
In light of my interview with Suzanne Johnston, I asked myself, what are some of the greatest impediments to success for the women of our community? In light of the rising Me Too movement, it's evident that one of the greatest problems facing women is our being constantly denied basic human dignity. The right to our own bodies. The right to say no. I sought out an interview with the Angels of Mercy to explore how our community serves to empower women who have suffered at the hands of sexual assault, domestic violence, and human trafficking. To start.
Okay, I'm Mary Jo Colligan, president and founder of Angels of Mercy, and I'm so thankful that you came in today to find out about what we do here in the community and all around the world. I began Angels of Mercy, it's been over 11 years now, because I know that because we're coming up on our 12th annual pasta dinner. So,
Nice.
Yes, and we've been in our office for 8.5 years, and our mission is to help women with life-controlling issues move forward. The women we work with come from a variety of backgrounds. Like I said, domestic violence, a lot of human trafficking,
Yeah.
a lot of drug, alcohol, sexual abuse, low self-esteem, self-harm, those that have tried to, take their lives. And so it's really the cycle of violence. And because I truly understand that, and it's a passion of mine. I've always served others in the other work I've done as a dental hygienist. I really have always wanted to help people. So that's what we do here each and every day. We welcome those that have been, through really unpleasant circumstances into our office so that we can help them realize their worth. We let them know that they're important. They're really princesses. They're daughters of the Most High King. Okay, and God created them special, and it's amazing to see and hear the transformation that begins. And you may wonder, how do they get here? Why did they come? A lot of times they don't even have anything but the clothing on their back.
Wow, yeah.
They're coming out of situations where they've been kicked out or they've had to flee, and so social workers refer them in. Schools, churches, hospitals, doctors' offices, whatever, drug rehabs, all of that. We get referrals each and every day. And we serve between 6 and 7 women a day here in the boutique.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, the boutique is a way for them to realize that, they can receive something free of charge. It doesn't cost them anything. And people donate clothing here each and every day. And we freely give it. When someone has low self-esteem, first of all, they won't even look at you in the eye, right?
Right.
Okay, they'll look down at the ground or something like that because it's that eye contact. They just don't feel like, they're good enough. But when they put on something and it changes their outside, they look at themselves in the mirror. But what's really happening is the outside's not only being changed, it's changing their innermost being. And that's where the true transformation takes place. And then, when someone feels that way, then they can walk out of here feeling different. They can perhaps maybe converse with someone that hasn't been good to them or kind to them and feel like, I got some power. I'm like this is like my armor. And it truly is, because the handout we give them, it tells them that this is basically their armor. It's the wardrobe that God has for them. And they are princesses, and it changes them on their innermost being. And I think that's one thing about empowering women. And then when we talk to them, some people will open up more than others.
Right, yeah.
They don't always open up because it's painful. But, we'll tell them about programs we have, or like if they are having a problem, somebody will sit with them, to the side, and get to know them a little bit more. And I think, knowing that someone cares,
Absolutely.
and you have a safe place to be and perhaps tell your story, that makes all the difference. And that's what we talk about in Beauty for Ashes. The flyer reads this. It says, her Beauty for Ashes, Her Story Matters Retreat, and where it is. And it says, we invite you to join us for our Beauty for Ashes retreat, a safe, loving environment for women to gather and share their stories and experience God's inner healing. I think it was about 2.5 to 3 years after we began Angels of Mercy, one of my neighbors called me and said, why don't you come to my house tomorrow night? Some women are coming over and they're going to make these pillowcase dresses. That's what we called them back then.
Right.
So I said, okay, I'll come over. And she said, I think it would be great for your ministry because, we're about helping women with these life-controlling issues. But now, what if we can help stop them by preventing abuse in young girls?
Yes.
So we went over, made some dresses, and then the next week we had a board meeting. So I went to the board meeting and I brought these dresses, and I said, these women are going to say, here she goes again. She's, it's Mary Jo, she's crazy. She wants to do something else. So I put them on the table and we were talking about it, and I explained what it was, because little girls wearing torn and tattered clothes in other countries are at risk for being trafficked as young as 2 and 3 years of age.
Wow.
A lot of times their parents will sell them for a few $1,000s, and then, they're just living this horrific life. So if we can provide, a dress that's well made, and, we have different styles and things like that. I mean, we have dresses that, like this one,
Oh, I can turn it.
Okay. Like we have t-shirt dresses, for young girls maybe that are in areas where they need more coverage. Or here in Rochester, we help the refugees a lot. This is more of a sundress style. And our goal was to make 100 dresses, okay?
Right.
So it was really funny because that was like on a Tuesday night. Then I didn't work on Wednesdays, but I went to the dental office on Thursday, so I was cleaning one of my patient's teeth, John Hand, and he worked for the Democrat and Chronicle. And I can say that because he's put it out in the paper that that's how we met, so it's not like
No,
that
it's fine,
anymore,
yeah.
So he said, oh my gosh, tell me about this. So I did, and we emailed back and forth over the weekend. Well, on Monday morning, a full-page article hit the DNC. I was like, oh my gosh. I called, I'm going to work, right? So I called Georgianne, and I'm like, Georgianne, you can't leave the house today. Don't even change, because the phone's already ringing off the hook, because they put our phone numbers in there.
Oh, wow.
So the first 2 days, we had over 300 phone calls.
Wow.
And on that Wednesday, there were 150 women lined up outside St. Cecilia's Church with fabric and sewing machines and everything. We had to take over the whole downstairs, all the old classrooms and everything. And that night, over 500 dresses were made. So we wanted 100. 500 were made that night, and to date, we've sent out 510,000.
Wow. One of the beautiful things that struck me about the Angels of Mercy was how it is based largely in the actions of women supporting fellow women. It began to appear to me how vital it is that we as women build one another up in a culture often fixated on tearing us down.
You have to work together. You have to work together. I think respectfully to collaborate with men or women is so important because everyone has a different point of view. Everyone sees things differently. Some closer to you may be on the same level that you're on as far as your beliefs, your values, your way of thinking, but there's always someone that's going to be slightly different. And it's a great way to learn and to enhance yourself as far as growing as a person?
So what I like to, for this, it's kind of internalized depression, which causes women to kind of go after women. And it is a byproduct of a culture of oppression. Like, you can only receive so many messages that you're less than, that you're inferior, that you're not enough, that you're right, that you're not equal, before you too start believing that about yourself. So internalized depression, you start to believe and live down to those negative messages that just get in. They get into us just like the air we breathe, because those messages are everywhere. If you look around, and most of the spots are being filled by the men, and the messages that you don't belong there, that's the man's place, that my place must be somewhere else, right? And so I do think that as women, we need to heal from internalized depression, that we need to reclaim our own worth, and the worth of our sisters. I think we need to spend more time really supporting each other, encouraging each other, and believing in each other. You know, I have a partner, a female partner that I work with, and I do a lot of racial justice work in my position as a pastor, because our church is committed to anti-racism. And when I began that work, I knew that I needed a sister partner. And so I have a white female sister who does this work with me. And when we began that work, you know, she would intentionally say things like, you know, boy, you're brilliant. That was a brilliant thought that you had. That was amazing. Boy, I never would have thought of that. But you are the right person to lead that. And just lots of affirmation, lots of encouragement. And I really needed that early on, right? Because I grew up in a world that, as a person of color, the message to me is that it is white people who should be out front, that it is white people who have the ideas, it's white people who should lead, it's white people who have the answers to the world's problem. Because when I look out, right, many of the roles that, the prominent roles that are held, that are around decision making, are held by white people. And so for her to really model something different, she was intentionally stepping back, and intentionally allowing me to lead and following, and deciding to follow my lead.
Because, you know, the saying that behind every successful man is a woman?
Yes.
Well, behind every successful woman is another woman.
From her experiences working with Elizabeth Cady Stanton to her sisterhood amidst fellow suffragettes, Susan herself knew the necessity of collaboration. By the change that she was able to effect, Susan B. Anthony paved the way for all of us today in our pursuit of justice, parity, and empowerment. I decided to ask the 7 women that I interviewed whether they had any words to impart to a future generation of young women looking up to their example.
Trust yourself, right? Because part of inequity, what it does is it makes you doubt yourself all the time. You just kind of wonder, you know, am I smart enough, right? Am I capable enough? You know, could I really do this? You know, is God really calling me to this? You know, do I have the capacity? And all of that self-doubt. And so I would say, women, trust yourself. You have everything that you need.
Follow your heart.
Dream big. Dream big, and to do everything in your power to make that dream become a reality. And with that being said, it is being aware of who and what is going to help you achieve that dream.
You're never stuck. You just have to take a step, and that everything you want to do within limitations can be done, and you can succeed in anything that you feel your heart or soul wants to do.
Don't be afraid, take more risks, have more adventures, talk to people who you admire, and have conversations with them and ask their opinion about how they got to where they wanted to be.
Set your goals high.
Thank you.
you know, and work like the devil to attain them. You know, that's what it's all about.
Okay, to young women, I would really like to tell you, don't ever let anybody tell you that you're not good enough, that you're not worth it, you're not worthy, because you are. You can make a difference. You are tomorrow's leader.
As I set my camera down after my final interview, I felt that by exploring the stories of these 7 women, I'd also come to tell the story of Susan. Susan B. Anthony dreamed of a Rochester that I feel we are still fighting to see. She longed for a future wherein women were not only equal to men, but also empowered, each and every one, provided with access to opportunity, education, and support. I believe and I know that this future will come within my lifetime with hard work. It will come by recognizing a legacy that extends beyond the ballot box.